Okay, so welcome everybody. We're obviously being joined as we go along. People are popping in all the time, but it's very nice to have you here, and it's beginning to form up into a kind of a Sunday morning event. I don't want this to be too pretentious, we're not being religious or anything like, well, yes we are, but not, it's non-denominational, so there's no preaching and dogmatizing, it's just a chat with buddies. I do a lot of the chatting, but interruptions and comments are very welcome. Basically, we don't do any religion, and it's simple. It's because I've got people who follow me from all over the world. I've got Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, and of course, Christians. Well, did I forget anybody? Well, of course, there are hundreds of thousands of minor religious groups too, although they wouldn't see themselves as minor. But you know what I'm saying, that we can't just pick any one particular point of view. And it's funny, the only people that write to me with a bit of a narky attitude, who do you think, it's always the Christians that say, I'm going to pray for you. You don't get it. You just don't understand. Everything anybody needs to know is all in the Bible and it's true. And they just have no kind of bandwidth or leeway for any other kind of religion. I have a very high regard for the Buddhist religion. No wars I know of have ever been fought in the name of Buddha. And in fact, Buddha would be appalled by the very idea. I've lived in some Buddhist communities, and I must say they're very nice, but even Buddhism can be pretty dogmatic, So, like I said, doesn't mean we're not religious, but we're basically very spiritual and believe in immortal life and that there must be some kind of authorship for the whole of existence. We don't need to give it a name. We believe that the experience of soul or the spirit is the most important aspect of our being. This earthly existence, the body is not going to last forever, but existence as a non-material being certainly will. Why? By definition, really, spirit is something without matter, energy, space, or time. No time means we're eternal. We don't die. We live forever. There's no time. It's timeless. Think about it. Only the body is mortal and will pass away. So each Sunday, I would like you to join me. We take a little time, a little interlude to remind ourselves of the really important issues in life, which is not, physical fitness, six-pack abs, vitamins, minerals, diets, all that. The really important things in life are honesty, love, joy, good living, kindness to others. That's what's really important and what really matters. Okay, so for those of you who are new, I start talking, but if you want to say something, by all means, raise your hand. If you look down on the bottom panel, there's a little blue handy signal. And if you stick that up, if you click it, it will stick up a hand in my view. Except that, wait a minute, I'm going to have to move it over this way, aren't I? Yes, that's right. Otherwise, I won't see it. Okay, so we should be good. And as I said, feel free to join in. It's not one of those sort of teachy webinars, where you just shut up and listen, basically, while some expert talks, being questioned by me. This is where I get the ball rolling and actually welcome someone to say, well, I don't quite agree with that, or actually, that's great, and you don't have to put your hand up to agree. That's not required. You can put up your hand to say baloney, but you better have a good reason to say it, not just being contrarian and argumentative. Okay, so today I've got quite a big sort of subject on my mind, as it were. I'm just checking various things, folks, like the recording is working and so on. Yeah, don't want to blow it this week. Okay, let's talk about the non-material aspect of living. As I was saying, there are certain models out there. For example, the Neo-Rosicrucian model, or the four ethers, and they talk about things like the etheric body, astral body, and so on. I just want to say that we don't do those in my Supernoetics. These are basically delusions of a world-class bullshitter called Helena Blavatsky. I don't see any reason to give her writings credence. She published this book called The Secret Doctrine in 1888, and she claimed it was based on arcane Tibetan writings. But, you know, since her story that she was sent to Tibet by spiritual adepts has proven pure hokum, and she was caught faking her seances, I think the rest of her work can't be taken seriously. And I say that with more than just, you know, bile in mind. I'm very much in love with the writings of another lady who did go to Tibet. Her name was Alexandra David Nail. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she makes no mention of this etheric body, astral body, and all that stuff. Now, David Nail, she was a really remarkable Belgian woman. She traveled in an age when most women stayed at home and baked cakes and did stitching. But she hiked into Tibet and reached Lhasa, which at the beginning of the 20th century was still called the Forbidden City. The only people there were the British under Colonel Younghusband, but nobody else was allowed in. And in fact, she was found and deported, but she sneaked back in again and she became a monk and joined men living the monastic life for many years. And when she writes about the Tibetan spiritual model, you can be sure she's basing it on her own learning. She was there for decades, actually. I'm telling you a little bit of the story, but in fact, you can go and see her story in Wikipedia. She was a hell of a woman. She lived to over 100, and her books continue to inspire genuine seekers of knowledge, not the sort of phony Blavatsky and wannabes and things. In 1914, Alexandra David Nail met this young man. He was 15 years old, and she would later adopt him as her son. I don't think there was any other monkey business on record, but they were both pretty dedicated to the spiritual life. They retired to a hermitage cavern at more than 4,000 meters above sea level in northern Sikkim. That's along the Indian border. 4,000 meters would be about 14,000 feet up. In other words, cold as hell. She really meant it. So I prefer to follow her writings than Blavatsky. Unfortunately, Madame Blavatsky, as she's sometimes called, got a grip on public imagination, and like a lot of doctrinaire and misleading facts, people just repeat the story over and over till they start to believe it. And many individuals, of course, haven't got the time or the skill to research psychic subtle spaces. So these things have kind of stuck. It's become true in a default manner. We don't need this, right? It's simpler. In fact, the sort of multi-body shells model doesn't serve much except to confuse and complicate the issues. You know, the emotional body, the etheric body, and the yada yada body, and the energetic body, and the astral body. Our direction lies with William of Ockham. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was an English Franciscan friar in the early 14th century. And he said his brother Bill, let's call him, his good idea was to get rid of the crap we don't need. It's called Occam's razor. In other words, shave off everything that's unnecessary and just focus on the minimum that you need. So what is the minimum? We do know for sure there is a physical body. I call that the creature. We do know for sure that there is definitely a non-material consciousness, a mind or spirit or soul. Soul's perhaps a tricky word. Or theta being. You know, theta means no physical aspect whatsoever. Pure consciousness, and we know that, and it's not physical. You know, we're not a brain. Any one of you who's, I don't know if anyone wants to stick their hand up and say, yes, I've been out of my body. If you have, please do, because we'd like to know. I'm not the only one. I've been out of my body dozens, scores of times. And the first thing you learn is that you don't need eyes to see, and you don't need ears to hear. Bill, yes, come on, Bill. Tell us.
I was probably a young teenager. I was in Boy Scouts, so maybe 13, 14, 15 years old, and I was following my older brother, my Irish twin brother. We were both born the same year. We're 11 months apart. Anyway, he and a friend of his and I were hiking, and it was kind of a steep, slippery slope. There wasn't really a trail. We were kind of trailblazing, and I remember slipping and sliding and falling down the mountain, and at one point I had an out-of-body experience where I saw the white light, and my light flashed before me, and it was wonderful. But I could see such cool things, and yeah.
Uh, Everyone says that, isn't it? It's wonderful, it's beautiful, it's exquisite, it's almost so beautiful it hurts. Did you get the feeling at that sort of intensity?
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, it was so beautiful that I wanted to stay there, but then I had this flash of, I guess, my purpose or whatever. I don't know what it was, but it was just like, well, I'm not ready to die, so can I go back in my body and you know, do whatever it is I'm supposed to do? Now, this, you got to realize this. I'm at 63 now. This is almost 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, I still haven't found that purpose, but I still wake up every morning wanting to do something. I want to leave my mark on this human existence of this particular body at this moment.
Right. Bill, I would love to talk with you at length. Let's do that. Can we make a date sometime in the next
Sure.
7 to 10 days?
I actually have your phone number, yours and Vivian's phone number from a few years ago, because I bought a program of yours when you were doing the DNA.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Give me a call, please.
Okay.
Love to, Bill. Thank you for that input. Now, Raju, come and talk to us. Raju? Did you put your hand up by mistake?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Raju. Yes. Introduce yourself and then tell us your experience.
Yes, right. My name is Raju. I live in Boulder, Colorado with my wonderful wife. For about 20 years, I've been introduced to a practice from the rainforest of the Amazon. It's a spiritual practice, and it's called Santo Daime.
Yeah, I heard of it.
Yep, and in this practice, we drink a beverage that comes from the Amazon called ayahuasca. And I had never had any experiences that where when I would sing, the words would come out golden, like
You mean colored gold?
Real gold.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You know, you meant gold colored, not golden sound. You mean golden visual, yeah?
Gold pieces, like the words actually were made of gold.
Yeah, wonderful. Gosh, never heard that one before. You get some extraordinary things on ayahuasca. I've never done it, but tell us, the important thing for the conversation is that when you were out, you could see things and you could hear things, even though you were someplace else. You weren't necessarily inside your head, yeah?
Exactly. I was conscious of my physical body, but I was outside of I was in the light, and I could feel things that were very subtle, very subtle, and I didn't, the heaviness of the body was gone.
Yeah.
And I felt that I was experiencing my spirit completely in a, without any mind, ego thinking processes going on.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, it's funny. Well, not funny at all, but everyone gets a sort of similar startling experience, you know, that it's not physical, but it's totally real. And it's the real you, you know, it's not the delusory hallucinating you, it's the real you. There's been thousands of tests done, you know, checking up on what people saw or thought they saw or experienced. And it just all checks out. So really, that's the real you. And the idea of body and brain is just one of these hooey delusions. It is true, if you mash somebody's brain, they can't talk to you anymore, but that doesn't mean they're not there. It's like if you're on your cell phone, if you just take a hammer and smash the thing to pieces, you can't talk with other people anymore, but it doesn't mean they disappeared or died, does it? So, you know, that cell phone model is pretty telling, really, actually. Anyway, let's sail on, folks. If anybody else wants to add, by all means, as we go along. Two brilliant perceptive insights there. I love it. Thank you, guys. So, oh, hang on. We've got a rush. Oh, Meg. Hi, darling. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, I've only just seen your name. Go ahead, Meg. Meg? Oh, there you are. You've come. Right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for persisting in helping me get back online here. I wanted to mention a couple of experiences. The first happened to my dad when he had an episode, and he saw the lighted tunnel without ever being told about it or whatever. And so that kind of just stuck in my memory for when I got a chance to talk with Dr. Brian Weiss. Do you
Yeah, I know Brian Weiss. Yes. Yeah, the past life guy.
And he's a fascinating man, and I got to talk to him, I would say back in about 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And that opened up my mind to just being open to whatever would come along. And as it turned out, I asked him about an experience I had had a few years earlier after my husband's open heart surgery, which was very, very, very stressful. I was lying in bed and I woke up and I didn't feel right. I felt like I was just a shell. I wasn't me. And all of a sudden, zoom, this object that kind of looked like it was a brain shape on the end of a silver cord came zooming down on me, at me. I mean, like, whoa, right in, jumped inside. And then I was me. And I talked to him about that, and I talked to one other person who is now passed on, who had had out-of-body experiences. And they said that the silver cord was indeed part of this whole basic way that we're built and that most of us don't realize. And I guess at that point, I caught myself when I was out doing my wanderings in the universe while my body was asleep, and I woke up unexpectedly, and boom, whatever is me really came back into my body. And there's some other things I could share too as we go along, but I don't want to hog the conversation.
That silver cord would certainly be what others would describe as the ectoplasm, I think. And the thing that came zooming back was the astral body, I guess. Some people feel you have to have an ectoplasm cord to safely travel the etheric. I don't believe that's true, and my experience says it's really not true. It isn't necessary. Is it okay?
I don't know anything about that aspect of it. Mm-hmm. I just know what it looked like, what it felt like, and what happened. And it was just amazing to think of myself as just a shell, and then all of a sudden something had to come and become me. So that was
the real
really
you, the body
strange.
on its own, the body on its own is a shell. The real you has to be in there for it to amount to anything. Just tell us, I mean, for those that may not know, Meg, just Brian Weiss, I know who he is. What was his book? The Lives of the Masters, was it?
Yeah, Many Lives,
Many Lives, Many Masters. That's it. Yeah. About past life. I had my first past life recall back in the 60s, so I'm no stranger to that. But if you're a non-material mind, it's a perfectly comfortable model. You'd think, well, it's obvious. Okay, now I'm going to turn to Joseph. I want him to have a turn. So come on, Joseph, let's hear what you have to share with us, please.
All right. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Yes, good.
Okay, great. Yes, mine was a little, although I've experienced a lot about a body, my most profound one, I think, was when I was about 17. I was given a set of breathing exercises by a yogi on my paper route, and I was doing them one night, and about 1 o'clock in the morning, I sort of came to and realized I couldn't see my body, feel my body, but that I understood absolutely everything in the universe. I understood math, physics, the cosmos, color, absolutely everything. So I decided I wanted to tell a good friend of mine. So I somehow figured out how to use the phone, which wasn't easy. Woke him up and I said, get a pencil and a piece of paper because I'm going to tell you the secret to everything and you're not going to believe how simple it is. And I spoke very, very carefully, very, very slowly until I thought I got it all down to him. And I said, so what do you think? And he said, I didn't understand a word you said. And then,
Bummer.
of course,
You
you
were
know, I could
probably
feel the
speaking at a
page
million
change.
miles an hour and he couldn't get it
Yeah, and I could feel
down.
it fading in it. I expressed it. It was like trying to stuff a marshmallow back in a piggy bank. But it was such a wonderful feeling. I've looked for it the rest of my life.
Okay, well, check out some more of Supernoetics. We've gone a long way down that road. It's one of my fundamental premises in Supernoetics that actually we know everything, absolutely everything. But we have to unknow certain things in order to have a game. I mean, if you were omniscient, all-knowing, all-powerful, I think you'd be bored to death after 10 minutes. It just wouldn't work. We need to unknow selected things in order to function, I think, basically. But anyway, brilliant, Joseph. Thanks for that one. I mean, that's another kind of experience that people have where they just feel they know everything. They've got the secrets to the universe. I've not had that one personally, but anyway, I know it's common and I've heard it from other people. I dabble in this a lot. Okay, let's move forward a notch. Because it will open up more possibilities. I was thinking about this model, the energetic model around the body. There is this kind of electrical halo thing. Now that's physical, like that's real energy. It's physical stuff. I don't think it's at all the metaphysical thing that Madame Blavatsky was raving about. There is an electrical energetic halo. In 1911, a doctor in London called Walter Kilner came up with a weirdy pair of glasses. There were kind of two layers of glass, and sandwiched between was a chemical called dicyanogen blue dissolved in alcohol. And when you put these glasses on, you could look at a person and you could see things around their body. It sort of visualized the person's aura. In fact, he wrote a book called The Human Atmosphere, which is odd, or The Aura Made Visible with the Aid of Chemical Screens. You can actually, if you're curious, you can buy Kilner glasses on the internet right now. They're just specially coated lenses. That's a bit iffy, but what's unquestionably sound and scientific, and a lot of us know his work, is that of Professor Harold Saxton Burr. If someone's got a conversation going in the background, could you sort of mute yourself? Would you mind, please, so that we're not distracted? Harold Saxton, but he wrote a book called The Blueprint for Immortality, and if you've never read it, you should. It's really wonderful. It's all about the electrodynamic fields of living things, and he wired up trees and humans. And he found, for example, trees were good because they didn't move around like humans did. But he found that the trees had an L field, a life field that varied up and down according to the cycles of the moon and sunspots and all those things. It was extraordinary, intelligent and far-seeing research that's never been copied since. And interestingly, he found some medical potential with this too. He found that if you tested a woman's cervix against the outside of her abdominal wall, if the electrical potential went negative in relation to the outside wall, that woman was going to develop cancer of the cervix, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, but she would develop it. So you'd think the medical profession would be really excited. Wow, here's an amazing discovery. In fact, they just poo-pooed and ignored the whole thing. That's just so typical, isn't it? But Saxton Burr and his colleague, who was called Leonard Ravitz, they also studied emotions, and they found that when people were sort of in a good mood, a good humor, a positive mood, their electrical potential will be running high. If the person was in the intensity of grief or depression, then the potential was really quite low. So, he wrote quite poetically that heartbreak or hate or love may one day be measurable in millivolts. Now, if that sort of thing interests you, then you'll certainly find what I do in supernoetics interesting. We use a psychogalvanometer to track down emotional charges that can be eliminated. The important point is, if you can't measure it with a galvanometer, you can't access it. So somebody who's stuck in PTSD, for example, you might find, say, tell us about the Vietnam War. It's a vet. And when he talks about nothing happening, no reading, it means don't go there. It's not available. And you find something that is available. Maybe his dog died a few months before, and that has a nice read, so you deal with that. It tells you what to use and where to look, and it saves you making mistakes, because a lot of counselors, they just dive in, this is a PTS case. All right, go back to the time when the person's got the screaming habdabs within 10 minutes. Not very intelligent, in my view. Whereas using Saxton Burr's approach, a similar approach, we found that we can easily track down accessible charge, emotional charge, and eliminate it. Anyway, moving on. So I want to talk about spiritual energies. And I want to say something shocking. This is what I warned you about at the beginning, Carla. Is there's really, I think, no such thing as spiritual energy. It's a conflict of terms. You hear a lot of this from so-called, light workers and supposed mystics and wannabe adepts and so on. But look, spiritual energy, as I said, is a contradiction in terms. It's either energy or it's spiritual. The spirit is non-material. Non-material means no matter, energy, space, or time. It's beyond all of those. Energy is part of the material, and in fact it's quite clumsy and clunky. As Einstein revealed, energy is the same thing as matter. It's the same as stuff. Matter is frozen energy. Now, the thing is, we don't really know what energy is. We certainly don't understand it. It remains a concept. All that we can say is it's been present. If a body goes from a cold state to a warmer state, energy has been present. It's raised the temperature or changed the inertial state of an object. It's sitting still and you push it, it starts to move. That's energy. And we can say energy did that. I haven't a clue what energy is. You can't see or touch or hold it, although I think most people can feel or in some way sense the presence of energy. Almost anybody can. But Isaac Newton, probably the greatest scientist of all time, he knew nothing about energy. He understood motion and mass. He understood the concept of force, which is immeasurable. And he showed all kinds, he had an amazing life and made all sorts of discoveries, but he knew nothing of what we call energy. That was really a concept developed in the 19th century. So, I mean, the thing, let me tell you what Richard Feynman, let me do this, I'll lean on him. He's one of the best known physicists of the 20th century, and he had this to say about energy. It's important to realize that in physics today, we have no knowledge of what energy is. And that was about 1980, 1990, that quote. So you may be shocked or surprised, but the point is, I think the ultimate nature and origin of energy is probably something for the theologians and philosophers to explore and debate. Scientists haven't got anywhere nearer in over 100 years. So we don't use that concept of spiritual energy as such. If you've read my book, well, either Virtual Medicine, the original book, or its big fat enlarged brother called Medicine Beyond, you'll realize that information is the thing that takes pole position, pride of place, as it were. And that's very consistent with modern physics. Now, in the old days, people used to think you had to have something physical to hold energy, like a book or a computer with all the chips and things that held information in the energy or material framework of the computer. We now know it's the other way round. And in fact, information is what rules the universe. So we need a model that adapts from non-material consciousness to the physical, and remember, energy is in the physical, and it's basically an informational sandwich. We call this subreality in subreality, and it's really basically what passes from consciousness into the physical, and vice versa. And we have to have a concept like that, otherwise it's impossible to understand how consciousness which is totally non-material, could affect the physical. That's what scientists are stuck on and grumbling about. You know, that's nonsense. Non-material thought can't possibly affect your muscles or your heart rate and things like that, but we know it does. So what they're missing is a model that would explain that. It's very hard physics to understand what non-material really means. I'll just go on a little bit, then we must talk rather than just me. But I wanted to introduce some pretty killer concepts today, trying to grasp what non-material really means. It means unphysical. It's the opposite of everything physical. Non-material means no matter, no energy, no space or time, and it means even no wavelength, because wavelength's a function of space and time, vibration, if you think about it. In other words, there's nothing to measure. It's not quantifiable, and that in itself is very hard to grasp. Modern scientists, so-called, self-styled scientists, say we can't measure it, therefore it doesn't exist. That's complete hooey logic. Of course, what they're saying is we don't have the right instruments, so we can't possibly measure it. But that's not proof that it doesn't exist. You know, back in the 19th or 18th century, if somebody had have tried to tune into radio waves, well, you had no way of tuning into radio waves. So if somebody had introduced the concept, you'd have to say, well, there's no such thing, because you've no way of measuring it. Now we have a way of intercepting radio waves and getting the signal, and we can hear the music and the rock bands. But actually nothing, you know, no thing is an impossibly hard concept to get our heads around. In fact, you really can't. You can't grasp what real nothing is. It's a purely abstract concept. You know, you can think of the idea, you can kind of get to grips with what it's supposed to mean, but that doesn't mean you really grasp it. Any more than infinity. You know, we can't experience infinity. It's something that was invented for maths. But you can't experience infinity. How would you do that? You know, many a time, and Viv's the same, we've talked about this. We've sat in the bath all alone and looked out the window and tried to imagine going on and 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 on forever, 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 on and on and on, and no stop and no end. And after about 2 minutes of that, you just break out in a horrible cold sweat. It's not even possible to face the idea. If you really think what no end means, going on forever, gives me the willies. Anyway, it means there's a lot of nothing out there. They call it space. It's supposed to be a vacuum. Well, it isn't. I've got news for you. That same Richard Feynman, he made a quote which I used in Medicine Beyond. He said, there's enough energy in 1 cubic meter of space. That's about this by this. 1 cubic meter of space holds enough energy to boil all the world's oceans. 1 cubic meter. Well, how many cubic meters are there in the cosmos? It's 93 million miles just to the sun. That's our nearest star. So there's an unimaginable number of cubic meters out there. So when you get down to this, doesn't it start to get kind of scriptural? You know, it all starts to be such a vastness of creativity and everything that you've come around eventually to concepts like God, you know, what people would call God. I call it primal consciousness, meaning consciousness was there first, and therefore the material exists within consciousness. I don't care what you call it. Some people would call it God. But, you know, that's, the Hindus use the term Brahman, you know, it means the universal ground of consciousness in which all reality exists. But anyway, back to my necessary layer. Oh, by the way, I promised you a mention of the mysterious everything in the email. Do you remember that? Well, it's back to this that we were saying, right? That movement is derived from energy, is the mysterious everything that defines the material world. All of material is movement. You've got solid particles moving in space. You've got energy, of course, which causes movement. Time, which is a progression of change. Space, in which all this movement takes place. It's all movement, movement, movement. And the exact opposite, so that's the mysterious everything, is movement. And the exact opposite is the spiritual, which is not moving. It's static, it has no moving parts. And you know, everybody that experiences this state, the guys who just spoke up about being out of body and so on might want to back me up, that really the super hyper spiritual state is absolute stillness. Stillness and calm at the center of everything. It's so still and peaceful and beautiful that it's almost hard to bear. It's at such a contrast with our physical material layer of living. Anyone want to say something to that? There's so many people now with their hands up because you didn't put them down, I think. Carla, do you want to start? I'll go down about 3, see if I'm barking up the wrong tree, but do you have anything to say to that? Nope. All right. Okay, Raju.
There you go.
Yeah.
I want to.
Oh, Carla, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. You have many concepts here at the same time, but if anyone is interested, Donna Eden has been around for over 40 years. Millions of people all over the globe have followed her. I'm a practitioner. You can see energy. When 200 people get together to one of her lectures, you can see the orbs in the room floating all around us. This is so amazing. And I highly advocate, if anybody would like to get her book or look under innersource.com, it will change your life. Her energy exercises are free. They're at the end of your own hand. You can see the energy in your hand, your aura, and you can tell when you get sick, your aura color changes fairly quickly. So this is the stuff that I wish everyone would at least read up on or learn. And it does switch over to spirituality as well. So I'm such an advocate of her work. That's all I want to put a plug in for.
Okay. Plug taken. Raju, anything to say?
Yes, Dr. Scott, just wanted to share, you had mentioned your book, Virtual Medicine and the
Medicine Beyond. Yeah.
Medicine Beyond, and the concept of information being processed in the body. Is that a way to just maybe distinguish between the spirit and the non-spirit? Because it seems like in the non-spirit matter, just like the old Skinner or Avasia machine or anything that you use in the physical, it seems like it's working on an informational processing, information processing.
It is, well, yes, there's a degree of that taking place. Perhaps I'll just introduce here one of my key concepts, which is that information implies consciousness, meaning information doesn't make much sense without some consciousness there to understand or interpret it. And that's the key. I mentioned this layer we call subreality, between consciousness and the physical. It holds information, and lots of people have come to different aspects of this by different ways. Rupert Sheldrake, for example, has his morphic resonance field. Some people go very mystical on us and talk about the Akashic Records and so on. I think some of them even visualize a book, which I can't hold to that. But certainly there is information out there that can be accessed. And in my book, sorry, go on.
No, the reason I brought that up is because I remember in your book you had said there's 3 ways to heal: organic, energy, and information. And I actually started a company called AUOEI, American Umbrella of Organic Energetic Information.
Oh, I'll take the credit for that. Thank you.
Whereas you can heal 3 areas: organically, what you consume into your body; energetically, Tai Chi, Qigong, using exercises that work with the energy systems in the body; and then information, taking some information and changing a habit, or changing a way that one does things.
Right. Well, that would be the consciousness part, wouldn't it? I like that model. That's why I espouse it, But I wonder, which is the most powerful. After this many years, I've been in, nearly 50, well, over 50 years, a physician. that consciousness is the senior one. In other words, if you change your spiritual dimension, then all the others kind of go down like dominoes. And that's why, why I think my supernoetics is important. Why I think consciousness rules. It rules through information which influences the physical and energetic. And I think it's wonderful that you're doing that, by the way. Terrific, Roger.
Thank you.
I'm going to quote somebody else from Sri Lanka, an astronomer and mathematician called Chandra Wickramasinghe. And he said, were it not for the human being, the universe would be but an amorphous existence, a concept with no vessel to contain it. It's very clever wording. I hope it's clear, but basically all this stuff out there doesn't mean anything unless there's something to hold it together in mind and awareness and know what it all means. The vessel to contain it, in other words. I think that's a brilliant quote. And it also reminds me, I remember the very famous quote of Sir James Jeans, the British astronomer. And it's a lovely quote. He says, the stream of knowledge is heading towards a non-mechanical reality. The universe begins to look more and more like a great thought than a great machine. Mind no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We ought rather to hail it as the creator and governor of the realm of matter. I love this very powerful quote, and it was in his book, The Mysterious Universe, published in 1930.
Very nice.
Yeah, and sorry, go on.
It reminds me of the experiment with the slit. The
double slit experiment, yes, where it's quite clear that matter is thinking and matter is making decisions. Scientists say, well, it can't be, but the experiment's been replicated thousands of times, hasn't it, Roger? That,
yes.
There's no arguing.
Yes, and the other thing is that it seems to me that it's very important that just in everyday, let's say everyday living, everyday thinking, how does that relate to everyday people? It's almost like we need inputs. We need outside inputs in order to change our models of reality inside, which is what we're happening. You can see in the Black Lives Movement walks and the marches, as in the consciousness of the people, as more information gets out there and more inputs are being made and given and more inputs are received by people, there's actually a process taking place where the consciousness is being elevated, and hopefully we are on the right track.
Right. And this speaks very much to the teaching that we're all as one is a bit simplistic, but let's say we're all so interconnected. We can't exist as an island alone. We are not just a person floating in a sea of other people. We're all related. Remember that famous poem by the Elizabethan English poet called John Donne, No man is an island. Yeah, and he said, don't ask for who the funeral bell's tolling, buddy. It's tolling for you. He's the guy that died, but you're in this as well. It's a very powerful poem and a very powerful concept. And that has been measured. That at certain times, random number generators are being used. Can I finish, Reggie? I don't mean to be rude, but just let me finish this thought.
Sure.
The random number generators have been running, and it's seen that at certain times they all go off the rail and they're not random at all. It's like, whoa, 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 something is happening. And at very particular times, like, the end of the O.J. Simpson trial, when the verdict came out, I remember tuning into Princess Di's funeral. I don't even like the woman. I think she's a flake, but I was in tears the same as most of the world was. And there was a huge surge in the random number generators just before, not after, just before 9/11 and the buildings were attacked. You can't argue with random number generators. They're random. So if they suddenly stop being random, something is going on. All right. I said it at length. Thank you, Roger. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say that with the social distancing that's going on and people isolating in places, it seems like the inputs that we're receiving right now there's less inputs coming into people as far as information, but I'm realizing that the amount of the information that is coming in has a huge degree of advancement or ability to change people's makeup.
Right.
And
Well, you know, the greatness, the oneness, the God concept, or any other vast, enormous, infinite concept is always out there. It's whether we're aware of it or not. And a lot of people, of course, are not. Or they've chosen some very limited, tiny, restricted model. You know, like they picked a God who's some grumpy old man with anger management issues. And that sort of narrows it down. But the bigness of this concept is out there, and it's open to those who want to access it. And that, in a way, that's the only life. You know, that's the only life, is to go out there and connect with the bigness of everything. We are big, we are part of it. We're probably co-creators of the whole thing. It's a very powerful and important concept, isn't it?
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your input. Yeah. Okay, so anyone else want to say anything? No more hands? Okay. So Margaret is asking, talk about where scalar waves fit into the model. Well, scalar waves actually, I believe, belong in the subreality layer that I was talking about. The characteristic thing about scalar waves is that they don't have, you know, direction, physical space, or any of those other manifestations. They just simply contain information. So they belong in that sandwich layer. I'm sorry, that's a very short answer, but I got the question right at the end. Anyway, for the sake of others, Margaret, I don't want to vastly elaborate. Maybe we should try and get together on sometime. Anyway, get together on scalar waves. It's a very important proto-scientific concept. Anyway, Meg, have you anything to say? I thought, no, you've gone. Good. I mean, your hand has gone, I should say. Okay, well, listen, I don't want to, you know, grind everybody into the ground with overwhelming information. I love this concept of giving more than people expect. You know, give more. But it gets a bit much after a time, especially when it's as intense as this. You know, we were not just talking about something comfortable like kindness and love and easygoing and so on. These are some pretty hard-hitting structural concepts, I suppose, in a way, trying to make a structure out of consciousness and reality. Yes, Meg, go for it.
I finally got unmuted. Gosh, sometimes it does it quickly and other times not. I have a request to ask if you could include a follow-up email with the spelled out names of quite a few of these people you've mentioned who would be fun to have the chance to follow up with, like the Belgian lady who went to Tibet and some of the English scientists you've mentioned who are lesser well known, because I'm not catching all the names and I would like to follow up.
Absolutely would, darling. I owe it to you. I'll do it for everybody. You know, all of them. You know, William Kilner and James Jeans and so on. I think this. I mean, what I'm missing, of course, is slides where you can see it while I talk. But nevertheless, I'm sort of more comfortable for the Sunday meeting that we just keep it to this talking level. I'll take it as a slight criticism, actually, Meg, that don't throw too many names without some way of writing them down. But I promise you, I will list all the names, even the young man, the 15-year-old that Alexandra David Nail adopted as a son. I'll give you them all, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm proposing to, you know, bring it to an end now. So if anyone's in a panic, they haven't said something or they wanted to say, now's your chance to be brave and stick your hand up and say it. But if not, don't worry. I'm glad you're here. And the fact you're still here means at least you enjoyed it this far. There was some point to it. And I just want to go on building and building on this. We won't always be quite as heavy hitting on the science and structure, as I said, in future. But I feel it's important to lay the ground. You know, this is real science. This is what can really happen. The materialist reductionist model that a bunch of molecules woke up one day in a muddy pond and said, oh, hello, I'm here. it just doesn't make sense that consciousness could have come about like that. They call it the hard problem of consciousness. I think it's the impossible model of consciousness. How could it possibly have happened? The answer is it couldn't. It just couldn't. The whole of science is based on the fact that everything's decaying. It's called the second law of thermodynamics. So how can things get more and more organized? Well, living and life and consciousness can. In fact, Erwin Schrödinger, one of the early quantum physics scientists, said that life eats negative entropy, meaning it's going the other way. It can beat all this decay of the physical that's going on and on. Life has the last say, and life is going upwards, not downwards. Anyway, that's another whole talk, I've just realized. So thanks very much for being here, folks. Thanks for coming. And I hope you got something useful out of it. And I'll see you again next week, I hope. I mean, you'll have to show up every Sunday if it's not church, but you know what I'm saying. The more often you can turn up, the better. And don't forget to invite a few friends. If you each got a couple of friends to join with us next week, we'd be all the bigger for it. All right, thanks very much for listening. Take care. God bless everybody. Goodbye. Bye.